Can you admit that you're insecure? Stephen A. can't. So on another podcast, he brings up not Stephen A, but Max Kellerman's name and his excuse for why the show didn't work and blah 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 blah. I've never seen a dude brag about getting somebody fired so many times. Like he's constantly talking about Max Kellerman and how he caused Max Kellerman to lose his job. It's almost as if he's proud of it. And whenever he talks about it, he can't really tell the truth. The truth is, he was insecure and kind of jealous of Max Kellerman. Why do I say this? Because when you hear him talk about it, first things he'll say is, well, he wasn't a journalist and he's not an athlete, so he doesn't really come from that background. And how do I get somebody on that show to go back and forth with me? I mean, you don't have the cachet to talk back and forth with me. You shouldn't really be up on the show with me. And I didn't really want the show to become stale. And I didn't want to become second to nobody. We had the number one show for 10 years, and I wanted to keep that running. So I went to the bosses and I told them it's either him or me. I can't really do the show with this guy. It's like he keeps going on and on about it. And just like, bro, you were jealous of the dude because he was smarter than you. And the whole TL thing was the straw that broke the camel's back. So let's backtrack. Stephen A comes from that same tree that Skip Bayless comes from. That journalistic background where they think they know all about sports and they can tell you their opinion means most. And when they wrote their articles, they made their bones coming through writing news articles for the newspapers and coming up close to teams and latching onto a play. And finally, they got their way to ESPN, Cold Pizza, and First Take. That's how they blew up. Stephen A. has no respect for anybody who wasn't an athlete or wasn't a journalist. If you didn't write or if you didn't play, he has no respect for you. That's why he doesn't respect YouTubers. People on social media, YouTube. That's why he always called YouTubers and people on social media trolls. That's just a way of saying I don't give y'all any credit. Y'all don't really mean much to me. Your opinion don't mean nothing. So when you get a guy that comes from a boxing background, he's thrown this in Max Kellerman's face multiple times. He did it on one segment. It was about Kobe, and that was one of the episodes where he kind of got shown up by Max Kellerman. First, Max Kellerman did it the day before when he did it to Stephen A. and Jay Williams because he brought up that Kawhi's more clutch than Kobe up until this point in their career. I understood the argument. It was a silly point he made, but he pointed out that Stephen A really doesn't make good arguments. He just argues in feelings and narratives. Because when you go back and listen to that debate they had about is Kawhi more clutch than Kobe Bryant up until this point, all he kept saying was, "It's Kobe Bryant." I mean, this is just a crazy debate to even have in the first place. I mean, I've been talking about basketball for over 20 years, and that's like me pulling somebody off the street to come and talk to you about boxing. I mean, really. As if Max Kellerman or anybody for that matter that doesn't come from his background ain't allowed to talk sports with Stephen A. But it's been happening more and more lately. And the more athletes he's gotten on that show, well, the more basketball players, rather, that he's gotten on that show, have shown him up in more ways than one. They've exposed him for being a dude that just goes off on narratives and just goes on really that journalistic, I can write what I want and you can't reply back to me. And for a dude that says all these athletes are sensitive, when somebody finally comes back and says something to him, he wants to go on and, oh, I know people in your circle, so don't make me pull your stuff out of the closet. Man, he pulls that call with everybody. That just shows you like you really don't have no comeback. You just want to expose somebody, which leads back to T.O. When T.O. called him out once again, then he went on his little tirade, oh, I expose you. You better watch your mouth about me, and blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, bro, just admit why you got rid of Max Kellerman. You were jealous of the dude for what you said in the podcast. I mean, he's a white dude educated, smart as a whip. That's all you really need to know. Most of those segments, I would say the last 2 years of that show when Max Kellerman was on, the last 2 years, he will whip Stephen A on almost every topic. It was pretty much the same thing that happened with Shannon Sharp and Skip Bayless. It got to a point where Shannon Sharp kind of exposed Skip Bayless for somebody who just argues his own narrative. And if you beat him to his narrative and just show him that his narrative doesn't really check out, then he really has no other argument. He'll just go back to his narrative and try to twist it, then try to twist your words against yours to try to make his narrative right. And he doesn't argue outside of that box. What do I mean? Point in case, or case in point, his KD LeBron argument. So he argued out for years that LeBron couldn't finish against Golden State or he didn't have enough in the tank and he just wore out and blah 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 blah. So when the opportunity finally came and KD couldn't finish against the Milwaukee Bucks in that 2021 season, you heard Skip Bayless come out and make all kind of excuses for him, or his foot was too big, or he was worn out because it was 1 on 5. The same thing he would pound LeBron James into the dirt about. Shannon turned around and flipped all of it back on KD. And you would see him just make excuses and excuses and excuses. And he couldn't argue outside his little points. So back to Max Kellerman and Stephen A. When he kept exposing Stephen A for a dude that just argues his own point and his own narratives, and he doesn't really cover any ins and outs of the basketball games or ins and outs of football games. You just left it looking crazy, and he just sat there with that mean mug and twisted up face, looking at Max Kellerman. Everybody sensed the tension the last year with that show. It's like everybody was like, "Bro, why is he going so hard on Max Kellerman all of a sudden?" And I remember an episode where Max Kellerman, I think he brought on Kendrick Perkins, and I think it might have been Quavo. It was Quavo or another rapper. He brought both of them on, and they had a little issue with each other, and like Max Kellerman had a little fun letting them iron it out on national TV. And Max Kellerman was laughing about it when the two screens dropped and it went back to the desk table with Molly, Stephen A, and Max. And Stephen A was like, I didn't like that one bit. I didn't like it one bit. I'm gonna just leave it at that. I was like, dude, you're acting kind of sassy for like a 50-year old man about that. And from that point on, you could tell it's like, dude, that's the end of the show. He had already been whipping you on all these topics, showing that he's smarter than you. And Stephen A would always bring it up. He was like, I know you smart, Columbia educated and whatnot. It's like, you ain't gotta keep bringing it up, dude. So really, it all boils down to Stephen A being insecure about his intellect and insecure about his knowledge of the sport. He talks about all the time that he bloviates and yells about anytime he talks to somebody about, well, I've been in this book. I've been talking basketball for over 20 years. He kept getting exposed by Max Kellerman, a person who he had no respect for. And it just left him sitting there looking crazy. And then you had T.O. come up, and I think it's 2019 on the Colin Kaepernick topic, just undressed him on national TV, which, like, going to T.O. about that, it's like, dude, that's a cardinal rule number one. Like Black 101. You don't do nothing like that in mixed company. You don't do that, especially for the world to see. You don't do that in front into another black dude in front of white people and say, "Well, Max Kellerman is blacker than you." That's like disrespectful level 100, bro. Why would you even do that? That's just immature on his part. But that's another thing that Stephen A was insecure about because he's brought up multiple times that people call him an Uncle Tom, that people call him a sellout, and whatnot, because he'll come on TV and say, "Well, I know people say that I'm a this and I'm a that, I'm a sellout, and I'm a this," and he tries to bring up the stuff he's done for the black community and whatnot. It's like, bro, you can't say that and try to pump your chest out about how black you is. But then after T.O. said what he said, now you want to wear these HBCU jackets and all that. I'm like, come on, man. Now you just overdoing it. But those few moments leading up until Max Kellerman getting fired, everybody saw it from a mile away. But nobody really pointed out what it was. It's because Stephen A is massively insecure and it shows. And he refuses to talk about it. Only person that talked about it was Marcellus Wiley on his podcast. He's the only person that's come close to mentioning what the issue is, what the issue was with Stephen A and Max Kellerman. But that's my take on it.